Greetings, Dennis Fair, retired Metropolitan Police Department, 2019, June the 8th to be exact. I'm not affiliated with the Metropolitan Police Department or no law enforcement agency, and the opinions and topics that I discuss, as far as what I say, is strictly my own thoughts and my opinions. So I'm not giving anyone advice or suggestions for legal purposes or legal advice. They're strictly my opinions, and for the most part, you can take it for what it's worth. I wanted to discuss some of the violence that's going on in the District of Columbia. Some individuals have kind of compared it to the 90s where they had the show City Under Siege, and when DC pretty much led in homicides. And for DC to be as small as it is, that's a lot. That's a lot. And most of the times in the district in the 90s, a lot of the homicides was supposedly drug related, so they said, and a lot of them were. But the thing that's different from today's current violence versus the 90s, there weren't kids getting killed and babies being caught with stray bullets. That just wasn't happening like it is now. Right now, for the most part, DC is pretty much basically the new Chicago, to be as small as it is, and it's slowly but surely getting to that status. Now, you didn't obviously Chicago didn't get like it is today overnight. It gradually got to that point where the crime pretty much overrode the police and the law enforcement resources. And that's pretty much what's going on right now. You got Metropolitan Police Department, who I'm extremely familiar with, shortage of officers, and not to mention the COVID situation. So you got to deal with the officers that have actually retired, the officers that are on extended sick leave. You got officers that maybe on administrative leave for various reasons, non-contact, might there be some type of investigations going on. Officers pending termination. What else? Officers that are just not on the street for various reasons, detailed to the academy, or I call them ghost positions somewhere downtown where they're not actually on the street. A lot of times you may get numbers on the news, or police officials give you these numbers, but those are not the numbers of actually officers on the street. If you really knew what the numbers were of officers on the street, you would probably be in tears right now, because it's just not that many officers on the street. A lot of times, one shooting, the crime scene for a shooting is going to take 10 or more officers pretty much to cover the scene, just depending on how large the crime scene is, or shell cases or things of that nature, or it just depends. But in most cases, that's going to take your crime scene management, and it's basically going to deplete your manpower. Not to mention if you have 2 or 3 shootings in one district, that's pretty much your whole district. So your calls for service, that's a lot of that stuff is going to be pending. Unfortunately, a lot of times you might call, or something's going on, or somebody trying to kick in your door. You may not just get a response from 911 right away when you pick up. You might be put on hold. That's actually happened before. And I'm not sure if it's currently a situation where when individuals call 911, they are put on hold, but I wouldn't be surprised, because it has happened, and it's something that has been an issue for years. It just occasionally it happens. It was a prime example. Police just went past, but that's an example of a situation that's probably a violent situation, and you got one officer going cold one to that location, and these things happen. But the thing is, what do you do if you got officers tied up on a crime scene where it's like 17 to 18, 20 shots fired? Every one of those shell cases actually has to be accounted for and watched during that whole crime scene. So that's going to take numerous hours before mobile crime comes out to collect it. If there's a body on the scene that's showing no signs of life, guess what? The body's going to stay there. That's another scene. You got loved ones screaming and things of this, trying to penetrate the crime scene to get to their loved one. They're upset. More officers have to be deployed to take care of that. So for the most part, you don't have any officers. And this is an ongoing, daily, nightly circumstance that's going on a regular basis. If you check with some of the local media outlets, like Alan Haney, and along with some of his individuals, his counterparts that he works with, he shows a lot of crimes that actually take place that you are not going to see on the news. They're not going to be televised for the most part, because the media doesn't consider it news. A lot of times, Wisconsin Avenue, one person shot, for example, that's going to make the news because that's not something that's occurring regular. However, you get a shooting on Benning Road, you may not even know about that unless you're tuned into a media outlet that's covering that, because the news is not going to Benning Road in most cases unless it's maybe three or more shot. They just don't consider it news. Now, of course, to that loved one that's laying on the street in Benning Road versus a loved one on Wisconsin Avenue, it shouldn't matter where you are. It's news because that's someone's loved one. But the media doesn't look at it like that because it's ongoing in certain areas of the city, so it's just not news. It's pretty much a shooting, unfortunately, on Benning Road or Minnesota Avenue is pretty much equivalent to the sun coming up. You've seen it before. It normally comes up in the morning at different times depending on the seasons. It's unfortunate, but it's factual. One of the issues, DC is pretty much slipping back into the 90s. City under siege days, when for the most part everything was out of control. You don't really have any media coverage in most of these shootings. And a lot of times you don't even have politicians even speaking on it. For the most part, the city is in a state of emergency, but you don't really see it being addressed. There was a state of emergency declared for the protesters, but for this going on daily, you don't hear anybody talking about, hey, we'll bring the National Guard in. Not that that would help, but you don't even hear it being addressed by your local politicians. Now, if there's something, obviously, that an officer does or that makes the news, of course, you'll get the police officials on the news talking about how outraged they are and this is just the worst thing, and that sounds all good, but that's politics. They're supposed to get on the news and say that when they are basically on the hot seat and the police have possibly done something that may have been wrong or violated an order or some of the policies. So then naturally the police are going to get on the news. Well, local DC for the most part are going to get on the news and try to defend it. And basically, what's the word I want to use? Basically throw the officers under the bus. I guess I won't even sugarcoat it. You're not going to see this in Virginia, which is right across the bridge a lot of times. Most of you don't even know who Alexandria police chiefs are. I know I don't. But they're not going to take that stance when something is preliminary and it's unknown if the officer actually did anything wrong. In D.C., it's a little different. They're not going to stand up and say, look, right now it's currently under investigation. We can't comment on that right now. But a lot of times you might get different individuals. First thing they doing, oh, this was outrageous. The officer shouldn't have did this, shouldn't have did that. So how can the officer even get a fair trial or fair, even get any type of fair treatment when you got your chief or assistant chief or whoever is basically declaring him public enemy number one after the incident without it even being fully investigated? Best thing to say is, hey, it's under investigation. If the officer is found to have done anything wrong, it will be handled. If it's officer is found to be committed a criminal act in this process, he will be prosecuted or she will be prosecuted or tried like anybody else. But to sit there and just throw the officer under the bus before the situation even, is investigated, it's just, to me, that's just beyond crazy. But who am I? That's one of the reasons I never chose to rise up in the ranks. There's a lot of politics that goes when you rise up in the ranks. There's a lot of wheeling and dealing, and it's a whole nother topic that I'll discuss at a later time. But I wanted to stay on this violence and what can be done to actually, as far as a defense. And right now, I don't really have an answer because based on the climate and the conditions of the Metropolitan Police Department, your U.S. Attorney's Office, with the lack of prosecution, these individuals don't have a problem shooting. Broad daylight, officers down the street, so what? Worst thing happens, I get caught, I get some type of leniency, and I'm released. Maybe the U.S. Attorney's Office won't think it's a case that's worth being prosecuted. Doesn't mean that it didn't happen. It's just a lot of times they're looking at it from a win factor. Will we be able to make this case in court? Although the officer might have did everything perfect, a lot of times they look at it, it's just, I don't think we even want to waste our time going to trial with this. Now, that's something that, to the U.S. Attorney's Office, that's part of their job. But to that individual that was a victim of that violence or the shooting or whatever, or even a possibility of a homicide, They got to deal with that individual being released back on the streets. And we all know it's documented that a lot of individuals that are released, what do? Go back and do it again. It's just no rehabilitation. There's no harsh penalties. It's just a joke. There are no real and serious penitentiary time in D.C. I mean, a lot of times the individuals don't have a problem going to jail. It's just, hey, it's a part of life. No big deal. Most of my homies there, most of my friends there. It becomes a part of life to some individuals. Not everybody views jail as, no big deal. Some individuals chose other paths, but the bottom line is there's no accountability. Excuse me. There is no real punishment. You do something like this in Virginia, a lot of times, broad daylight, you shooting like that. Best believe when you get caught, you're going to be dealt with. Police are going to deal with you, and the court system in Virginia is going to deal with you. It's not going to be a whole lot of foolishness and nonsense like the D.C. court system. Now, obviously, I haven't been in a minute, but a lot of times, for the most part, nothing has really changed. I mean, for the most part, until they decide to open back up, you will have individuals in court falling asleep, reeking of marijuana. You know what I'm saying? You going to court, you about to go to trial, or you on a case that might change your life. You're in the court high. Obviously, you smell like marijuana. You falling asleep in the court. That's not going to happen in Virginia. It's just not. Because they're going to step you back. And a lot of times what that means is judge will order the marshal to say, look, get this guy. I'm going to find out who he is, and we're going to put him in a cell or hold him until he comes to his senses. DC, it's a joke. Jokers a lot of times falling asleep. Worst thing they do, tell them to go outside the courtroom. You in the courtroom, your cell phone ringing, all types of nonsense. There's no respect for the most part for the court system. The court system doesn't have no respect for the citizens. And a lot of times these individuals don't have respect for the police. And in some cases, the police don't have respect for themselves. So I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I'm not going to be pro-police. I'm not going to be pro-citizen. I'm going to call it like it is. I'm not on either side. The bottom line is you got police that don't do their job. You got police that's unprofessional. You got some that do the job. And a lot of times, a lot of individuals that do the job are penalized. So policing isn't pretty, first of all. So you got individuals nowadays that, hey, look, we don't want to stop them no more. If you do a traffic stop, don't do this, don't do that. You can't say this. You can't look at the citizen this way because that's just maybe looked at as offensive. It's just gotten away from actually doing the job. Nobody's saying go out there and do anything stupid like what the individual did with George Floyd. You basically committed a murder on video. However, policing isn't pretty. You got a call for a man with a gun and somebody gives the description over the phone. You get in that block, you have to handle it properly. It's not going to be like, okay, guys, can you please, can everybody please just sit on the sidewalk? No, it's going to be handled in a different manner. And sometimes it's just not going to be pretty. You get a call for a man with a gun and an individual makes an evasive move or does something stupid, like puts his hands in his pockets or reaches in his waistband after you told him, let me see your hands. That's just common sense. If the police are armed or they got a gun and they ask you to let you see their hands, you probably should just let them see your hands. Now, of course, you can be gangster and follow some of I guess some of the rappers, that want to go against the police and you want to go viral. Reach in your waistband. If you got something on you, then if you feel like you feel lucky or you feel like a winner, if you got a gun on you and you want to test that officer, then go ahead and pull it out. A lot of times, famous line, you play stupid games, you win stupid prizes. Situations like that a lot of times can be avoided if you just obey the commands. Now, obviously, there are some police officers, no matter what you do, you can possibly get killed because some of these officers are just not trained properly. A lot of them are so scared that they shouldn't even be on the streets. And again, that's another topic. And like I said before, although I'm retired, I'm not going to play pro-police or pro-citizen. I'm going to call it like it is. You got some citizens, the first thing they want to do is police car go past. They want to scream after police. Okay. Now you drawing attention to yourself. Whatever you was doing, whether it was illegal or not, what's the point of yelling after police? I mean, They wasn't even stopping or didn't even see you standing in the cut or whatever y'all was doing. But what was the point of doing that? You want the attention. So guess what? They make a U-turn, they come back. Now you got a situation which could have been avoided if you just kept doing whatever you was doing and let the police go through. A lot of times, all the police are not aggressive and going after individuals 24/7. You got some officers just come to work, take the calls for service and leave. They're not doing no proactive police work today because it doesn't get you anywhere. You stop somebody or individual, that you have knowledge of that is known to carry a gun or whatever. Depending on how you handle that situation, you could be fired. So a lot of individuals are not doing anything. Who's paying for that? The citizens, for the most part. And the individuals in the streets know the game. The police not really pressing them. Not going to go all out their way anymore, because why go out your way, do something, get captioned on video, and the first thing they're going to say or do or make you pretty much the scapegoat. Oh, well, he shouldn't have did. They should have asked him, could he sit down first before, he did that? Why didn't he just ask him to take his hands out of his pockets? A lot of foolish quarterbacking from the sidelines type situations where you got individuals that have no clue what it's like to push a scout car for 10 hours or longer and then go to court. You got individuals that, maybe he could have gave a warning shot. Well, maybe he shouldn't have shot him. The guy was trying to throw the gun. Excuse me again. But who actually knows when an individual is trying to throw a gun away? You got an individual reaching, you chasing him, you tell him to stop, reaches his waistband, pulls a gun. Maybe he is trying to get rid of it. However, but police behind you, why don't you just take the loss? Just give it up. You got the gun on you. Excuse me. Chances are, if you go to court in D.C., you'll probably be released anyway, and the case will be dropped. Unfortunately, that's something I'm saying in a sarcastic manner, but it's actually true in a lot of cases. And then what happens is the individuals go out and commit a murder. And then the next thing you know, after that, you get sentenced to some real time. When you're doing like 30 or 50 years, then it's like, I wish I hadn't done that. I want to come home. I'm rehabilitated. That's too late for all that. That's not happening. They're going to ship you somewhere far because you're not going to stay local, and you're going to do that time out there. And guess what? Life's going to go on. All your friends or family going to forget about you. The letters going to stop coming. If you got parents, eventually they're going to die off. And you're not going to those funerals because a lot of times they got to pay for marshals to escort you and bring you to the funeral. Nobody's doing all that. You don't have that kind of money to get that kind of treatment. And money matters. The prime example is a situation where most individuals can't even afford an attorney that commit these crimes. A lot of times they have, most of the times, I ain't going to even say a lot, majority of the times, they're court-appointed attorneys. Court-appointed attorneys is pretty much going to treat you the same way he treats me. If we both have a court-appointed attorney, he's not going to do any more for me than he did for you because they're getting the same amount of money for each case. The average, the average individual attorney is charging like $300 an hour, and that's cheap. So the most of these individuals out here in the street committing these violent crimes, doing all this foolish. A lot of the youngins out here in the streets, and it's not all young. You got some older guys that commit them, older women or what have you. But for the most part, I've been seeing a lot of youngsters doing a lot of these crimes. And the thing is, you go to court half of the time, and I've seen it for myself, a lot of these guys and girls don't even know the actual charges they've been charged with and what they mean. A lot of times I've seen attorneys explaining to them what the charges are. And they're like clueless. They're like, okay, they don't even understand what's going on. And then next thing you know, they taking a plea to a crime that's lesser, that's a lot of times involving less time. But the crime that they taking a plea for is not even the crime they committed. They're going to plead out to something they didn't even do. Guess what? Less time. Maybe you get some type of probation or maybe less jail time. But the fact is, you got a conviction on your record because you pled guilty to something. Eventually, what happens, the crimes add up. And eventually, the revolving door at the D.C. courthouse, Superior Court, that stops. And eventually you do something stupid where you get caught on a murder charge. The next thing you know, you found guilty and you don't come home. Your life pretty much is over. Game over. So unplug the video game for the most part. It's a done deal. Your life is going to be in some federal penitentiary or depending on what type of crime it is, you're going away. Simple as that. But that's not really what's going on right off the break. So most of these individuals are reeled into the system. So he lets you out. You figure you beat a gun case. Okay, 7 of us in the car, one gun in the back. Couldn't really pin it on nobody. We beat it. We good. Go out here and do the same thing over again. Guess what? Eventually, the revolving door stops. You do something stupid with 2 or 3 individuals. Somebody gonna snitch. Now, of course, the no snitching thing, that's a bunch of BS because most individuals say that, but once you hang some time over their head, in like 15, 20, 30 years, they're going to cut a deal. Now, you're not going to see that on TV. You're not going to see it on Twitter or any social media, but behind closed doors, them detectives break them down like they sticks, like little branches. Because when that time comes and you're looking at 15, 20 years, most individuals not built for that. You can talk that game, but most individuals are not going away for that time because you're not going to have no commissary for the most part. A lot of times, what have you, the time is going to eventually progress, and individuals are going to stop putting money on your books and things like that. You're going to be forgotten about. Excuse me, got some allergies. So I have to clear my throat periodically. This weather, one day is warm, the next day is cold, so this kind of throwing me off a little bit. But a lot of times, back to what I was saying, individuals will go to jail, and time goes on. Your peoples die. The family that you had stop caring. They stop sending packages. Man, people going with their life. You know, all that keeping it real. We gonna keep it real. We gonna stay in contact with you. That's not happening. Dudes ain't gonna be talking to you or trying to keep up with you. They going with their life. And a lot of times the same dudes that you were close with are the ones that put you in because they snitched. They copped a plea. Well, hey, look, man, look, I know about a murder. You know, I know so-and-so did this. Can we talk? I just want to stay, keep it between me and you. I'm not trying to go to jail or whatever. Next thing you know, you want to, how they know all this? Dude home, but you gone. But I guess, when you're on the street, excuse me, that's a prime example when keeping it real goes wrong. And there's no accountability. Like I said, for the most part, Metropolitan Police Department has slowed down. A lot of times you'll see individuals speeding. There are no traffic stops. If you're a DC resident, think about the last time you saw an MPD car on a traffic stop. You don't see it. You don't see it anymore. For the most part, police don't want to get involved. The police don't want to do anything because the first thing you're going to get is, oh, well, they just stopped me. They messed with me for no reason. What have you. So a lot of police, rather than do all that, you know what? Let me just do these 10 hours, 8 hours, whatever shift it is, and go home. It's easy to do nothing versus going out here policing. Because nobody, for the most part, is going to back your play. From the top to the sergeants. And most of the times, unfortunately, that's the truth. So what do you get when you got officers that pretty much are doing absolutely nothing on the street? Crime is going to be rampant. It's pretty much like if you got a rat problem. If you ignore it and you're not going to do anything, guess what? You're going to have a rat-infested home. And for the most part, that's what D.C. is right now. It's becoming a crime-infested city because nothing is being done. A lot of times, individuals see the police, whatever, man. Fire up some blunts while they driving past. Now, everybody knows for the most part the weed laws, marijuana laws have been somewhat relaxed and they've changed. However, you cannot smoke marijuana on public streets. However, most individuals don't care. It's like we want the police's attention, so we're going to do something, which is kind of stupid, but that's a whole nother topic that I'll eventually get to. But you got individuals that do this, figure like, it's open season, we do what we want. Things like this going on. The Christmas season is coming, Black Friday, all that. Individuals going to be in these stores getting stuck up and robbed for all types of items. Cars going to be getting broken into because for the most part, last few Christmas, COVID pretty much shut everything down. So individuals are going to be anxious to get out and get in these streets. And what's going to happen? Crime. Criminals are going to be anxious to get in these streets and take advantage of them. So a lot of these individuals, what do? They go to these malls. They go to all types of stores, Walmarts, what have you, doing their Christmas shopping. And guess what? Breaking in your car as soon as you get in, because I know you're not going to walk into a mall or do some shopping down Georgetown. You're going to be right back to your vehicle. First of all, if you even park somewhere in Georgetown, you're going to be parked a few blocks on the off street or depending where you are, if you're in a mall somewhere, maybe not even in DC. Guess what? I know you're not coming right back to your car. We got time to work on your car, break into it, and we see the packages a lot of times in SUVs in the back of the car. All it takes is somebody walking up to the vehicle and looking inside of. Guess what? They're gonna break into your vehicle. Come back, all your packages are gone. A lot of individuals go as far as parking in garages or valet parking. Guess what? There's a big sign that says the valet parkers or the garages are not responsible for stolen items. That's basically to cover themselves. And a lot of times that's another hustle that they put out just to, in a way, to prevent you from trying to make a report or doing it. A lot of times they are responsible for those items. So it depends on where you are or where you're parked. But a lot of times the individuals that are often parking your car or working in the garages are also in cahoots with individuals, and they tell them, hey, look, man, he just pulled up. He in the garage. Give you a time. I'll call you when they come back. But this is the same guy that's standing at the booth that's taking money. A lot of times there have been situations like that. So you think that you're safe in the garage, but the individual saw your packages in the back. He pretty much made a phone call, and he's going to take a cut of that whenever the property is taken or whatever, depending on what it is. So it's all types of things that's going to be going on for the holidays. I would actually recommend individuals to shop online versus going out and getting caught up in the madness. I'm a legal gun carrier. Conceal and carry, I take it everywhere I go. Wouldn't leave home without it. But even me, I'm not going out for the most part, do no types of shopping in no malls and nothing. Plus, I'm past that anyway. Anything I want, I can find it online. There's no need to even go to the malls. And most of the stuff in the malls is just picked over and it's basic. You're not going to get the same quality as you would if you actually search online, depending on what you're looking for. And like I say, even as a gun carrier, I don't want to deal with the headache of somebody running up on me and then I have to pretty much do something where I have to discharge my weapon, possibly taking somebody's life or critically injuring them, or if they get to jump on me, critically injuring me. I'm no superhero or anything like that. I'm pretty fast with that Glock, but the bottom line is it's not about that. It's about prevention. If you can prevent a situation, why put yourself in it, even if you do have it up. Somebody jump out on you with a knife. Hey man, give me y'all. I know how that's gonna turn. That's not gonna be pretty. A knife versus a gun. That's a lose-lose situation. So rather than put myself in that situation, or any individual put themselves in a situation, whether armed or not, sometimes you have to avoid these situations by not even engaging in the shopping and all the hoopla and the nonsense. But in DC, it's gonna be a problem. It's already a problem, and just like during the week, you're getting 3 or 4 shootings, homicides in the middle of the day. There was a time where a lot of this stuff didn't go down during the daytime. A lot of times it kicked off at night. But now these police have details, which they don't do anything but sit in a parked vehicle. And these shootings right up the street. Right up the street. And next thing you know, you see an officer running the Longfellow, I think, 9th and Longfellow. There was officers at George and Kennedy. And there was also, I believe, at that carryout, there's, what is that, 7th and Kennedy? Wherever that carryout is on Kennedy Street. And they still went in and committed 3 homicides within that block. And the officer was there in seconds on video. But that just goes to show you, anybody that knows Kennedy Street, these officers are always at this location, for the most part, every single day. But that didn't matter. That didn't matter. There is no fear of MPD or, for the most part, any law enforcement agency. And not in D.C. anyway. Now, in Virginia, Alexandria, maybe Fairfax, you're not going to see this type of stuff. If it does happen, it's going to be, for the most part, every now and then. It's not going to be rampant like in D.C. on the hour. You're getting shootings on the hour in D.C. Every few hours there's a shooting. So, in my opinion, one of the biggest issues is accountability. There is no accountability. If I shoot somebody, for the most part, there's a chance that I can come home. It's just a burden of proof for the officer to prove that I did it. Now, is that easy or is it hard? It depends on the case. Sometimes it's easy because the individuals are captured on video. The individuals are saw speeding off. The cameras are all over the city on the light poles and what have you that pick the tags up. You got speed enforcement cameras. You got to speed. You're not going to, most cases, drive off slow. So that camera's going to catch that tag. And a lot of times with the technology, they can zoom in and do all types of things. So the individuals likely chance of getting caught are very good. But the thing is, once they're caught, even if the police officer has a solid narrative, solid paperwork, get to U.S. Attorney's office. So many different shootings, so many homicides. A lot of times, they're often not paper cases based on just the abundance of cases. Well, hey, this one we'll just, or maybe we'll won't pursue this, no paper or whatever. And some of the reasons are actually because of the officers' lack of police work. Sometimes the cases are just not tight. That does happen. I'm not going to sit here and make it seem like all the police officers are just airtight, because that's another issue that I'm going to eventually discuss: training and the lack of training with law enforcement agencies. And I'm not just referring to MPD, I'm referring to law enforcement agencies in general. The lack of training and professionalism, something totally different. I'm going to get into all that. But the thing is, DC, it's going to get much worse. And this is something that I did speak on. I was invited to one of the ghost gun meetings after my stepson was killed, as a, I guess, I'll say a political courtesy. The mayor reached out and invited myself and my wife to the ghost gun. What was it? A ghost gun press conference where they bring all the ghost guns out that they've recovered, and the media is there, and the mayor speaks, and the Chief Newsom was there at the time, and Assistant Chief, who else was there? I'm trying to think of all the officials was there. Conti was the assistant chief at the time, so he was actually there. And I did speak to them after the excuse me, like I said, I was after the Ghost Gun conference press conference was over. I did have an opportunity to briefly speak with Assistant Chief Conti and Chief Newsom, and of course they offered their condolences, and they said the things that police officials normally say: we're going to get the individuals that killed your stepson. And they did. They did make an arrest, and that's something that's currently pending trial right now. First degree murder, premeditated, and that's something that I expected the Chief Newsom, because I was familiar with him. I'm also familiar with Chief Conti, Assistant Chief Conti at the time, but he's chief now. I'm familiar with him. I expect him to say that, but it was just kind of funny. Although I was invited, myself and my wife, to this Ghost Gun press conference, the media did look my way and my wife's way during her speech and what have you. But after that was over, she didn't even address me. She didn't come to me, didn't speak to me, didn't offer condolences or anything. Which, you can't make this stuff up. I wasn't surprised, but I understand the political game. A lot of times it's easy to do those press conferences and say that textbook, hey, condolences, we are praying for you. Prayers, that's cool and all, but she walked right out, didn't say anything, didn't, for the most part, look. Her and her entourage walked out like she was the president of the United States or something, and she's a local official. Why invite an individual to a Ghost Gun preface and you've advised your staff to invite these individuals and you don't have the courtesy to acknowledge and even offer your condolences? I know that it doesn't affect you. It wasn't your loved one. You're a politician. You're the mayor. You're not experienced with this type of violence. And until it actually happens to someone that you're affiliated with, a lot of individuals have no clue what it's like until they lose a loved one. The mayor has a very young child, but if there was a situation where, for example, and I'm not wishing anything like this, her young daughter was struck by a stray bullet, she would probably be in an uproar like she should, and everybody else would. But a lot of times they're insensitive to the individuals that have actually experienced this or go through this. So like I said, she just pretty much walked out, and it's not something that surprised me. I can't say I was surprised. I can't say I expected more, but, that's typical of your politicians. It's okay. I'm going to say what I'm supposed to say. Let's take pictures with these guns. But the bottom line is the ghost guns, individuals getting caught with, nobody's doing no mandatory time. You get released, and for the most part, you get to do it again. Now, commit the same crime in Georgetown Although the crimes are the same and punishment is the same no matter where you are in DC, but go down on M Street and let somebody in one of the stores get caught with a stray bullet. I assure you that individual won't be released. You know why? Because it's a different area, different times, different places. It shouldn't matter, but the bottom line is Georgetown versus Kennedy Street. You get the same crime on Kennedy Street, there's a good chance the individual, hey, might beat this. That's why a lot of times you don't have these type of situations that really go down in Georgetown on a regular basis because they know we come over there. It's a large police presence for the most part that patrol these areas. The police are not necessarily all out of service because they're not multiple shootings on the hour that take the crime, the crime scenes that take all the manpower for the most part. So Benning Road, it's a good chance I'll get away. I commit a shooting. They already working one on Minnesota Avenue. Where the officers at? They're not gonna have a chance to catch me. The next thing you know, it's another shoot. Your manpower is depleted. In 2D, Second District, Georgetown, or your high valued areas, you're not gonna get this. A lot of times because the citizens in these areas want to work with the police. A lot of times you'll have citizens come out, look, the dude just jumped out. He went in the backyard. Now you try this somewhere in another part of the city, the individuals are not saying nothing. They not talking, none of that. They don't want to be a part of it or anything. But the next thing, the same individuals that's not a part of it, a lot of times could be possibly potential victims. The next day, you got shots fired and you got your grandmother laying in a pool of blood in the kitchen. Now the thing has changed. Now you want to help. You want to go out and kill an individual that did this or whatever. But just yesterday, you saw the police chase the man with a gun. You ain't want to get involved. I get it and I don't get it. But in Georgetown and some of these other areas, citizens will call the police in a heartbeat. Hey, well, it's a car out front. I just called because I thought, I wasn't familiar with it. They're just sitting there parked. And it happens. I mean, what do the police do? You still got to respond to the call for service. You got to check on individuals. Now, you can't walk up to the car and say, hey, why are you parked here? Hey, we got a call. Just wanted to check to be sure you're okay. Call, you have to, for the most part, be professional. You can't just walk up to the individual, although some officers probably will walk up and say, hey, look, we got a call that you just sitting here. That's not the way to do it. But again, that's another aspect that I'm going to cover that revolves around training. If you're not trained to do it another way, you're going to do it the best way you can. And a lot of times, the police academy doesn't teach you that, how to approach a vehicle in a situation like that. You know that there's a potential that it could be something going on, but that you don't know that. So you have to approach it in a neutral manner. Hey, how you doing? Just wondering where you're okay. Got a call that Carver's Island. We didn't know if somebody had passed out. You have to kind of dress it up a little bit so you're not offending the individual you're approaching, no matter what ethnicity they are. Because someone could be parked and just parked, talking on the phone. Now, because that neighbor doesn't know who that individual is, does that make it right for them to call the police? It depends on you. Depends on what you consider a threat or not. Depends on your suspicious level. There's nothing against calling the police. There's nothing that says you can't do it. The only thing is when they get the call, the police are required to come out. Can't ignore it. Can't ignore the call. Although a lot of times, in law enforcement terms, it's a BS call. That's what a lot of officers will consider. But you still got to go because you don't know. You get there and it may be someone just sitting there on the phone or doing nothing. Might have just pulled over to think about something. It happens. Then again, you might have an individual pulled over to check out a location while another individual is burglarizing something. So it depends, but you still have to be professional. And that's another topic that I'm eventually going to with the lack of professionalism in law enforcement and the lack of training. Yes, I said it. Lack of professionalism and the lack of training. And I can speak on it well because I was there for 29 years. I can tell you what's right with the department and what's wrong with the department. I'm not just referring to the Metropolitan Police Department of D.C. I'm talking about law enforcement in general. But I'm going to get ready to close out. Again, subscribe, submit some comments, submit some questions, like, You can do that. If you don't like it, put the thumbs down. Like I said, I can deal with it all. And if something you don't like, put it in the comments. I got tough skin, so it's not you're not gonna have me in tears or upset or anything like that. And by the way, if you see this jersey, this is a Cleveland Browns jersey, but I'm not a Cleveland Brown fan. This is a throwback of Jim Brown. So just know, regardless whether it be the Washington team or Redskins or whatever is politically correct, it doesn't matter because they losing. I'm a DC fan all around because I'm from here and still here. But again, basically, I'm going to close out, and I'll probably go into this topic a little more. But it's going to get a lot worse before it gets better because you don't have any accountability. And when it comes to accountability, I'm not just saying from politicians all the way down to U.S. Attorney's Office, there is no accountability. Obviously, for example, if you speed, there's a red light camera or a speed enforcement camera. That's going to cut a lot of the speeding down in that block because you know what? You're going to get that ticket. And it's not going to be something you can beat or get around. Unless somebody specifically writes I think it's an affidavit that you weren't, they weren't driving the car, or you admit you were driving the car and the owner wasn't. That's the only way the owner can get out of the ticket. Now, are those cameras calibrated on a regular basis? Are they actually legit? That's a whole nother topic. But the thing is, with that, it's accountability. You know, if you go through that block where that stop sign camera is and you don't stop, you're going to get the ticket. Nobody wants that ticket. So for the most part, you got individuals that normally roll through, coming to a complete stop, counting to 5 and all that, because those tickets get expensive. Especially if you miss them and they go to another address and they double. And guess what? You're not going to be able to renew your license. There's a lot of things you're not going to be able to do if you don't pay that ticket. So individuals within that block stop at the stop sign. Prime example with the crime. If there's no accountability, if I pop somebody, shoot them, whatever terminology you want to use, I go to court and they let me out on my own recognizance and I got a court date maybe 6 months from now, we'll get into something else between there. Because in my mind, it wasn't no accountability, wasn't no repercussions, no punishment. So I'm going back out there in these streets and I'm going to get into something else. So that's one of their problems. There is no accountability. And when I say no accountability, it's all the way around. Citizens, police, U.S. Attorney's Office, politicians, all the way around, there's no accountability. Now, prime example, and I'm going to close after this. I keep saying I'm going to close, but every time I get ready to close, I got something else I can think of. Chief Newsom. Didn't know him personally. Saw him periodically when he worked at the 2nd District as a chief. The homicides for Chief Newsom's position as a chief increased every year as he was a chief. Normally, if you are in a position, for example, I'm going to use the Redskins as an example, where you got a coach that every year he's the coach, the losses increase. Eventually, somebody's going to step up and say, you know what? Whatever you're doing is not working. We appreciate you, but we're going to have to change and move forward and give somebody else an opportunity because this isn't working. The homicides are going higher every year. Now, is it the chief's fault as the savior? No. But on the same note, is it the coach's fault as the savior? Not necessarily. You got players under you. Chief, you got officers under you. But if you can't somehow manage to get some wins, they're going to eventually move forward without you. That didn't happen with the MPD. He remained chief. The homicides went up. Now, there's a lot of ways you can look at that, but that's a prime comparison, comparing that to a situation where you got an individual where morale is going, the homicides are increasing every year. It's something needs to be done. And I'm not saying that it's all his fault, but at the same note, if it's not getting better at the leadership position, in anything, if you are in sales and your sales are dropping every year, eventually your car dealership or whatever you selling, they're gonna move forward or say, look, man, this might not be the position for you. Every year you sell less cars, and this year, what's going on? But hey, he was able to stay, and the homicides are increasing every year that he's dead. So that's something also to look at. But again, accountability, accountability. That's key word, accountability. And things are going to get worse before they get better, because I don't see any type of I don't see any solution. A lot of times you see somebody gets killed, 3 or 4 shooting that mobile podium that they take around. Depend. You might see chief content. You might see somebody, I guess, if he manages to get a day off, that's pretty much reading from the text. Hey, at so and so we had an individual shot 4 times, or so and so. Right now we're looking for a male so and so, so and so. It's a textbook. It's pretty much like reading from a cue card. Once you do it a few times, you pretty much can do it every day, any day. And it's unfortunate, but the key thing that never happens is, after these shootings, there's never a plan. There's never more resources. There's never a flood of officers that go back into these neighborhoods. They might put a scout car there for maybe a little while until they just don't have the manpower to keep that there. And then the next shooting, they take that scout car and move it to another location and put a parked officer and let he sit there for the most part, stay on the phone. Because that's all you're really doing, is staying on the phone. You're not doing anything because you can't take any runs. If there's a run like in the next block, you have to actually call and get permission to go to that, even though it might be a crime in progress in the next block. That's just, you're not supposed to leave that area. Should you leave that area, you'll be disciplined, and you could face some types of suspension or even termination, depending on the outcome. So it's a real problem. It's a real problem, man. Again, accountability. That's the key word. And I'm going to close out with that. Leave some comments, subscribe, send it to somebody else, whatever. Like I said, if you don't like what I had to say, that's cool too, because I can take that too. But put some suggestions, if some topics you want to cover, just put them in the suggestion box. I want to be also discussing something dealing with contesting moving tickets, contesting parking tickets. Now, this is not something that it's going to be some legal information for the most part. It's just going to be my opinion and my comments on things, on how, in my opinion, you should contest tickets, or whether they be parkers, moves. It's a lot of things I'm going to discuss, but it's not going to be entirely biased discussion, whether it be police or citizens or anything. I'm not pro-police, and like I said it before, because if I was, I wouldn't discuss some of the issues as far as the negatives, like the lack of training or anything like that. I'm not pro-citizen either, because I'm not going to sit here and debate, an individual should be released after he's shot 4 or 5 people and he has 6 prior felonies, for example, conviction, possession of a firearm possession of a firearm as a felon and things like that. I'm not going to condone the individual being released. So I'm not going to play any specific role for anybody. I'm just going to call it like I see it. Now, some people are going to be offended. Some people are going to be like, oh, you know what? This makes sense. I can get with this. But regardless, subscribe, thumbs down, thumbs up. Put something in the comments if you got a topic you want discussed. And eventually I'm going to get to a whole lot of stuff. And I'm going to close out. Good night.